welcome to the Forward Thinking Podcast. It's Crissy here from CS2, and I'm here with Charlie.
Hello.
Welcome, Charlie. Always nice to have you on. Again.
Nice to meet you.
Today we're going to be talking about a topic that's top of mind right now, and maybe by the time this gets published, I think will be too, but really how MOPS can help during an economic slowdown. Or really when some companies are looking to kind of get more efficiency across their team. So whether that is your budgets are being cut, your team is, you're maybe trying to be more mindful of the growth across the company, but how MOPS can actually maybe maintain your momentum, which is key in marketing just through that time. And make things more efficient. So you had a post on LinkedIn that I thought did really well, talking about those key points. And maybe just to kick it off, could you just add a little bit of background on kind of why you posted it and kind of what was the reason, like the inspiration for that?
Yeah, and I guess I know this podcast is going to go out in a month or two, right? So Today the date is June 8th. So I think, who knows what's going to be going on when we actually post this. But obviously right now there's been quite a lot of layoffs, kind of reminiscent of early COVID days. There's been a lot of talk about an economic slowdown, a lot of talk about the tech sector suffering maybe disproportionately within this economic slowdown, especially like VC-backed companies that are reliant on funding. And, there's a million things you could talk about in that. And, there's thousands of articles online. So I'm not going to go into all of that. But the way that it kind of relates into marketing operations. So for years now, especially the last two, there's been this incredible thirst and appetite for growth. And marketing ops has always positioned themselves as, and we've done this too, as like a growth enabler. Like, we're here to help you grow. We're here to help you go from 100 people to 1,000 people, or 1 million in revenue to 10 million in revenue. And we're here to help you scale your marketing programs. We're here to help you just do more and more and more and more and more. And that's great. But there is other parts of marketing ops that maybe don't require growth, but you can still provide value. So that's kind of my point. We can help companies scale up. We can help companies scale down. We can help companies maintain. There's lots of ways that marketing ops can provide value. So I think hanging our hat on the growth story was great for a while. But we also need to now be very clear about other ways that we can help businesses. And that will protect our jobs, and protect our livelihoods, and protect our MOPS teams. And, from my just like casual observant recently, this isn't scientific, so I could be wrong, but like what I've noticed, like MOPS people seem to have been okay, maybe because the teams were so under-resourced, like even during the hiring boom anyway. So it's like, you can't really make them any smaller. So which is good. Like, I always want MOPS people to stay employed, obviously, and companies are going to really suffer. But like, I guess the point of this podcast is, how do you position yourself to make sure the company knows that you can help this company in multiple ways, even if the company is having more sluggish growth, and just protect and kind of really articulate that value.
Yeah, totally. I think the end goal is always just like revenue growth. But I think with that, companies just, lean into just like the grow at any cost kind of thing, and see how, they have all this funding and what they can do with it. But MOPS can actually maybe help with like maintaining that revenue growth, or at least not making it like slow down as much, while still maintaining like smaller resources, less resources. So
one thing actually, I mean, because revenue growth is important, right? But to get a return on investment, profitability, you can either improve revenue, or you can help cut costs. So like, MOPS can do both of those things. Right. So like, this is we've got some ideas for that in our 5 ideas, but just to be really clear, right? Like, if your company's struggling to grow revenue, pivot and help them reduce costs. So
no, that's a great point. All right. So first point that you had was do more with less through automation and operational improvements. So Yeah. What are some of your thoughts around that? And I can add on too, but just want to hear
Yeah,
yours.
I'm interested to get your thoughts as well. But so obviously some companies going through layoffs, right? So you have to do more with less. And if you are a MOPS team or a MOPS team of one, and you have been in the unfortunate position where you've seen colleagues get let go, now it's on you to figure out how to make this company still be successful with less people. And like the word that you would use with that, potentially one of the options is automation, right? Like we've got platforms, we've got tools, we've got skill sets that can automate things. And where maybe we threw bodies at it in the past, like how can we figure out a really smart way to just make this easier?
Yeah. I talked about it on a post that I did too, but I do think that although sales is really important, I do think that some companies like invested a lot or over invest in sales. If you look at like they'll maybe spend 20 million just on like their sales teams even, and then you look at like the spend in marketing and it's like just a fraction of that. And so I think now unfortunately we are seeing like salespeople getting let go during this time because that is like a people cost. And but I think too that with that you can maybe think about what were some of the inefficiencies before. Like were some of those people there and doing things that didn't really provide that much value, like sending over a ton of MQLs that didn't really want to be followed up with, and like having a human do that. So I think there's a lot of things that we can be creative on around that even kind of match up to the customer experience that people want right now too, which is like, having prospects really do the learning themselves and education, and then try to put more pre-qualification on those leads or contact sales before they be sent to sales. And so you limit who gets sent over, and then potentially look at like if you do have lower level leads for like SDR teams, or that even come through contact sales but there's not the right fit for you, putting in more automation to follow up with them can be really useful. So I'm never like saying like, oh, let's just remove people and put in like automation for it. But there can be cases where it could be really useful, especially if the conversion rate there is super low, right? Or there's just a lot of woman power there to like do those things that really didn't need to and weren't fruitful.
Yeah. And I think so. Automation is an option, but I think what you touched on as well is just being more efficient. Like when the money supply is high and like just there's money just flowing everywhere, a lot of these inefficiencies can kind of slip by. But now that is going to be completely flipped on its head. Like we need to be a lot more efficient. We can't just waste a lot of people's time, because we have less people now, maybe, or even if you haven't had a layoff situation, maybe hiring is going to slow. So then, you just need to make sure you're just getting the maximum value out of everything that you're doing. So a lot of that stuff that just isn't working. And this is why things big kind of like events like this can actually be a good learning experience for people to like level up, because you have to like really take a look in the mirror and have a really long, hard look at like what you're doing and figure out like, is this actually serving us? Is it actually good? Because if it's not, then we have to, cut it and then be more efficient. So first one, I know we've talked about it for a bit now, but like just figure out areas that you can automate, repetitive, like relatively, those simple use cases where you can put automation where it's not going to overcomplicate things. The second bit is look for those operational improvements just to drive efficiency.
Yeah.
And just really be honest with yourself about what's working and what's not working.
Totally. Okay. I love the second one, especially because we're doing something similar for a client right now, but it's cut spend across the tech stack by auditing and identifying the shelfware. Yeah, I mean, I can first like start, and then I would love for you to add on, but one project we're doing right now is like a full tech stack evaluation for a client, and that's really been useful because we're really identifying like, are they getting the most out of that tool? Is there duplication between this tool and another tool? and what's even the cost of that tool compared to like what we're seeing out of it. So we're actually doing some ROI calculations, and then how are the teams using it? Are they getting value? And I mean, we even saw just, 3 event platforms. Do we actually need 3 event platforms? Or was it just someone had a need, so then they went and got another one, when really can we just find one platform that would help? So this might even mean like consolidating your stack, but maybe even looking at new technology to help you serve its purpose. But there's probably a lot of things sitting there that could be cut, that could then give you the budget back to, do better brand activities or even maintain your team.
Totally. Yeah. And I know everyone's got shelfware. Yeah. So just again, it's like the looking in the mirror activity and going like, what is really working here? And, again, when times are great, you're just throwing money at all this new tech because it's just cool and it's the latest thing. But, is it really now necessary?
Mm-hmm.
So
it's kind of like a self-perpetuating thing, though. It's like tech companies are cutting because they know they might not have people renew. But then right. And this is a good point to tech companies, and this probably should be on here, but we're talking about MOPS. But like, this is where you lean into your customers, because if your customers are happy and are really seeing value, like that's super important now, because they're a great resource for free marketing, but also you want to make sure you renew. But anyway.
Yeah, 100%. But for a MOPS person, right, like you could potentially save your salary,
yeah.
for the amount of your salary and cost just by maybe doing an auditing of your tech, and we're not against tech. Obviously, we're in marketing operations. We love tech. There's really great platforms out there. We don't just cut for the sake of it. But a lot of times, actually, you maybe your budget remains the same for tech, but you've maybe consolidated, you've picked the right platform. Maybe if you remove something to be able to get something, because maybe your budget isn't going to grow. Like, oh, we were planning on having 20% extra budget for marketing ops next year, but now we're not. So we were planning to, maybe buy this other tool, but okay, but we really need that. But like, what can I remove to go through that exercise instead of just adding and adding and adding. Mm-hmm. And then obviously, as we all know in marketing ops, the complexity that I have that chart. I don't know if anyone's seen it, which is like, what people think is about tech. Like the more tech you have, like the less work for everyone, but really it's like an exponential growth curve of how much work. So, if you do cut some tech, that means, your team can be more focused on other things, because you're not just all like being the glue, kind of keeping all these things together with their like half-baked integrations and like duct tape everywhere. Mm-hmm. So again, like it's another way to just like simplify,
totally
focus on what's working.
Yeah, that's 100%. And I think that it requires a purpose, it requires a strategy, and it requires like people to maintain like the use of it and that strategy. Yeah. So it could even be the people that would normally provide the strategy might not be there anymore, and that also makes the decision quite easy.
So number 1, do more with less. Think about what you can automate, make operational efficiencies. Number 2, review your tech stack. What's the third one?
So never miss an opportunity for enhancing our lead to revenue process. And I guess I kind of alluded this at number 1, but do you want to take that one?
Sure. So when deals are maybe in short supply, you can't lose a deal.
No.
Right? So like you got to think about that conversion rate between, when someone's interested to opportunity to customer. So where that like when someone's interested, you may call that an MQL, you may just call that a demo request, like whatever. But when someone shows interest, and like this is true interest, like an actual hand raiser, not just a white paper download or whatever.
Yeah.
Like someone actually feels like you contact us or demo or signs up for a free trial, whatever. We need to optimize that process to getting to a customer.
Yeah.
So that could be, right now, maybe the process is they fill out a form, your team gets a Slack, 3 days later they respond, the person's moved on, and it takes 12 days just to get a meeting in the calendar. You can't do that, especially if like budgets might not be cut yet for some of these companies. You need to kind of get in the door maybe now, right? So like time is of the essence. So make sure that process, that you've created a buyer's process instead of like a sales process, right? Like, so if that could, I mean, there could mean some tech investment, like a chili piper, so they can book online. It could just mean optimizing the SDR, like making sure your SDRs are well trained, well enabled, that they're actually able to have like the right conversations. It could mean maybe even for high quality leads, they go straight to AEs with like with a solutions engineer to like just sell like that day, you know, as opposed to like putting them through hoops. Like really reevaluate your whole process there from interest to customer and make sure that is optimized, because every bit of drop off, you know, could have been a customer, could have improved your revenue, could have improved the situation for your company.
Yeah, totally. I love the idea of going straight to AE because I even brought up that with the client, because I think everyone kind of leans on what they've seen or known before. And I'm like, well, how come some of our best leads here, why don't we just send them directly to an AE? Because like, and then it just seems like makes sense. They probably want to talk to sales, and then we don't have to, you know, bother them with someone who doesn't understand in
and
between.
Trying to qualify it, like we need to like qualify you, but it's like, I mean, we've got the tools now.
We already know you're qualified. That, right? Yeah. Okay. So don't miss the opportunity to enhance that lead to revenue process. I mean, we talk about this all the time, so should be doing it anyway. And then 4, level up the team through training and enablement to cover more skill sets during a hiring freeze. I think this is great, because I do think that this is actually for junior marketers or people who maybe still have their jobs and are in a junior role. It's a great time to kind of lean in to doing as much as you can, because I think both you and I, we started our careers like after a recession, and it was great because during a recession, and it was tough. Like you had to be an intern, and then you had to really prove yourself, and then you ended up doing like responsibilities that probably should have been for someone who is like much more senior. But and if you show the ability of like this thirst to like learn and be proactive, like you're probably going to keep your job, because you are probably, it's hard to say this, but like a cheaper resource, but you also have the ability to take on a lot and fill in those gaps. And so but I think for marketing ops, like you have the skill set, like you see what's going on and you know how to scale out programs. And so this is a time where like you can be a center of excellence and really train and enable your team to do more with less, and then also maybe teach them to be even like more data literate. And they probably want to be, because they're going to have to make quick changes, understand what's working and what's not, because really this is the time to cut out anything that's not working.
Yeah, we actually had the same advice. I remember when we did a similar podcast at the beginning of COVID, because at that time like all the events were cancelled, and I remember us saying for your events team, try and like pivot them to helping you in MOPS. Like there's so much work to do in MOPS, and you could like help reskill someone and keep their job. So that there's an opportunity there, because one, you know, MOPS is such a painful, you know, painful kind of like position to lose, right? Like every company has been around a while now, that has a MOPS person that then left, has felt the pain of like not having the MOPS person. So like you might be maybe safer than other people in the company, but if you can help, you know, reposition them, get them support on your team, like if you do have an open head count, or if there isn't any layoffs and it's kind of like, there's just your hiring has paused and you were maybe going to go from a MOPS team of 1 to 3 or whatever, or 5 to 10, then now you've got an opportunity where some other people on your team might have a bit more time, might have a bit more interest, might be more kind of willing to be like your kind of advocate, or someone that's going to be kind of chipping in on the MOPS side. So just be more open to that model where like you are leveraging more people on the team, and maybe decentralize it enough that you can get their support. And then, you know, train them and spend that time to level them up, so then they're able to, you know, be data literate, are able to be kind of like an analytics minded person, they're able to think operationally. Like all of these skill sets are going to help them in your company if you're able to just disperse that more than just keeping it within your operations team.
Yeah, 100%. I'll even add on to that to say for MOPS, like make sure you're doing your own training too during this
True.
time and skill set and level up, because if there's ever a time where your skill set is a value, it's now. And MOPS, like you're really gonna be like looked at like, are you an expert in what you're doing? Then you're a great resource to hold on to. So make
Yeah,
yourself
and
invaluable.
I'll add on to that. I heard a thing someone said the other day. I hadn't actually really heard this before, but kind of they're like consultants need like, and during good times, companies go to consultants to help them, and then during bad times, companies go to help consultants help them. And MOPS, I think a lot of people in MOPS have said this. You know, I'm not the first person to say this. We're kind of like this internal, like
Yeah.
consultant center of excellence, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
kind of person that is there, kind of the glue keeping everything together, but also advising the business on what to do next because you're the closest to the data. Like you are that position.
Mm-hmm.
So like really think of it like that, right? Like yes, during the good time you were there helping them grow, and now during the bad time you've got to help this company survive or help this company even thrive during this time. And that all of these kind of things that we're talking about here are ways to do that, especially with this like working with the wider team in a way that maybe you haven't in the past.
Totally. All right, last one, number 5, and we've already kind of touched on it, but really MOPS can help the team make better decisions with better analytics to help leadership allocate budget more effectively. I think this is even not just leadership, but everyone kind of make better decisions on where the budget's going. So I mean, to your point earlier, during this time, like if you can help manage costs and be more effective with your spend, that's great. Like that's gonna definitely help, with your bottom line. So I think MOPS folks, and I think this for the skill set thing for MOPS folks is actually too, if you're not comfortable with data and um, like getting this type of reporting, or even if there's no one even managing a budget, I think there's a lot of teams where like no one is really even doing that very well. So this might be a time to like lean into that and step up and be that person. And that would show you as like just an incredible kind of resource, and also it's super helpful for helping these teams make better decisions.
Totally, yeah. I've said this a few times just on this podcast. Like during the good times, like things slip, or like people kind of, it's just then maybe there isn't as like scrutiny on decision making.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
let's just throw $1 million into these paid ads, or let's just throw this into that. Now there is intense scrutiny on decision making when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
budget.
Yeah.
And how do you make decisions, right? Like you can put your finger in the wind and guess, or you can try and have a more analytical, informed decision making process.
Mm-hmm.
And who are they going to turn to? Right, the person that's been deep in the data and helping in analytics
Mm-hmm.
for however long you've been at the company. So really be proactive. Go to your leadership tomorrow and like with a report, with a dashboard, like ask them if they need help. Like really align with your leadership team to see how you can help them leverage the data that you have. And we've talked about that as like the one way to become best friends or help or with your CMO. Like if you are the person closest to data and analytics, that is like your love language between you and leadership is like data and analytics and helping them make decisions. Because when they're in that leadership position, all they're doing all day is making decisions. And if you can make them easier, make them feel more confident in their decision making, they're going to want to keep you around.
Yeah. I will add here too that you don't need tools to do this. I think a lot of times people
Right.
think, oh, analytics or budgeting, okay, what tool am I going to buy? Well, in this case, you probably don't have the budget to buy one. But so think about ways where you can also give these insights without having to invest in a tool, especially for maybe ones who are going to, but then can't now. So there, like even budgeting, you can do that like on the campaign object, you can do in Google Sheets, like you can figure out a way to do it effectively. Also with attribution, you can put in maybe even like look at your simple kind of lead source attribution, or you can even put self-reported attribution, which could be very useful for the team, and putting that onto your forms and asking the prospect.
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, maybe saying like, okay, we need a process to gather information from our customers on that too, and trying to do better insight into what marketing to do. So there's ways you can get around this without having to invest in fancy tools.
Totally. Yeah. So if we go through it, first one, think about ways to automate and make operational efficiencies. Number 2, reviewing your tech stack. Is there any shelfware in there or any opportunities for consolidation? Number 3, making sure that lead to revenue process is not leaky, right? You need to make sure you're closing every deal you can. And you don't want it to be MOPS' fault that it's leaky. Number 4, helping level up the team with training and enablement, so you've got more coverage over the skill sets you need during a hiring freeze or layoff period. And the last one, aligning with your leadership to make sure they have the analytics that they need.
Totally. Yeah. I really like this episode. I hope it was super valuable for you all. Any final comments?
Yeah, I think the last thing I'll say is, there's a lot of kind of anxiety with everything right now. The positives that I see for MOPS is this basically.
Yeah.
Like we very much can pivot and help the business regardless of that macro environment. So like, feel confident in your skill set. Like there was a, I mean, go just like 3 podcasts ago, right? Like the situation was there's not enough MOPS people. That suddenly hasn't changed, 3 weeks later, right? There's the skill set is still in demand. There's still not enough people with the skill set.
Yeah.
So you are in a good position. It doesn't mean that we're all going to get out of this like perfectly unscathed. Who knows? Like it could be better or worse than what everyone's saying. But you should feel confident in your skill sets. You just make sure you just need to lean into what we've talked about and position yourself well with your skill set and apply it to what the business cares about. And ultimately, we've been talking about this for years, right? Like MOPS needs to align to the business priorities and need a roadmap around that. And actually, I guess if we want to add another number 6, have a long-term roadmap.
Yes.
Because then if the business knows you are working on things that are aligned to what they need, and they wouldn't want to stop that momentum.
Yeah, or they're gonna go, oh shit, who's gonna do that work?
Right. Yeah, if they go like, what's this person working on? And they go, oh, nothing really. They're just putting out fires here and there. That's a different conversation than, oh, they're working on this. They're helping us launch our PLG process that we have to do, or they're helping us cut costs in this way. Blah blah blah. So just making sure that you just really align to what the business cares about is always true, but especially now. So definitely, see how you can figure that out. And hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, things will be rosier. If not, things will always come back around again. Like the world is always in this cyclical process. So yeah, I think that MOPS is well positioned to weather a storm. And I think if we apply these principles and focus areas, then we're positioning ourselves well.
Totally. Awesome. Well, if you enjoyed this episode of Forward Thinking, feel free to share it with a colleague or friend, or leave us a review. We really enjoy people doing that, so you can spread the word about Forward Thinking. And we hope to see you next time.